Tonight, I want to explore a quieter corner of the past with you, one stitched together by questions we still can't quite answer. I'm going to keep my voice soft, unhurried, and I'll carry you through each story like a lantern through an old corridor. You don't have to decide what to believe. You can just listen. If sleep comes, let it. I'll keep telling the stories anyway. I want to begin in the summer of 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, when heat pressed on the rooftops and bread ovens turned the streets into slow rivers of air. A woman stepped into the road and began to dance. There was no music, no festival, no reason given, only movement. Hours passed. She did not stop. By the second day she was joined by others, a handful first, then dozens. Chroniclers said they danced until feet bled, until legs buckled, until some collapsed with exhaustion. City leaders tried everything a well-meaning committee can try when faced with the impossible. They hired musicians to pace the frenzy. They cleared a guild hall to contain it. They even commissioned a stage, as if the madness belonged in a theater. Doctors called it a hot blood affliction. Humors overheated by summer. Priests whispered about punishment. The rumor you may have heard is ergot poisoning, a fungus on rye that can cause spasms and visions. It's a tidy answer, and tidy answers are comforting. But ergot doesn't choreograph a city. And why did it end as abruptly as it began? Fading like a fever, leaving the town to fold up the hired platforms and wash the streets. Paper remains, sermons, civic orders. One official request for a dance hall to spare the bridges from too much pounding. But the core is intact. People danced, for weeks, helplessly. And then they didn't. I can tell you what was said. Who signed what? How much was allocated from the treasury for musicians and guards? I cannot tell you why. I don't think anyone can. The city exhaled. The ovens cooled at night. Autumn came. The mystery kept walking. Now let me take you to a Suffolk field in medieval England, to a village called Woolpit, where the wheat ripples low and soft and centuries are measured by harvests, not by wars. The tale sits right on the boundary of folk tale and chronicle, which is where good mysteries like to live. Two children appeared, a boy and a girl, and they were green. That is what the sources say. Their skin had a greenish cast. They spoke no English, and would eat nothing that wasn't raw beans pulled straight from the stalk. The boy withered. The girl survived, learned the language, and said they'd come from a place called St. Martin's Land, a dim country with no sun, only twilight. She said they'd followed the sound of bells into a tunnel and stumbled into the blinding world of Woolpit. People attempt explanations. The green could be malnutrition, the language a dialect from far enough away to be alien. The story a medieval way of telling a migration tale. But that tunnel of bells hums in the background, and the girl's description sounds less like geography and more like something between the worlds. The village carried on. The girl grew up, married, lived a normal life, as if mystery sometimes just puts on an apron and learns to bake bread. The recorders moved on. The field is still there, gentle as ever. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the bells. I want to place something cool and metal in your hands now. A hollow little bronze thing with 12 pentagonal faces and neat circular holes of different sizes. Roman dodecahedra. They show up from Britain to Hungary, small enough to fit in a palm, thick enough to feel deliberate. They're found in military sites, farmsteads, hoards, even graves. No ancient text explains them. No inscription helps. We know what Romans did with coins. Let's step indoors, into a library with high windows and the smell of old bindings, and I'll set a book down between us. It is called a manuscript because that is the proper word for something handmade, and it is called voynich because a collector once bought it. But those names are a costume. Beneath them is a forest. The pages bloom with plants no botanist can confidently name. Baths hold women like tiny pools of green water. Constellations spin into unfamiliar wheels. The script itself moves in neat, looping lines, elegant, consistent, as if the hand knew exactly what it was doing, and the language behind it refuses to resolve into anything we recognize. Code breakers have tried. Linguists have tried. Theories sprout like ivy. Cipher, hoax, lost language, constructed language. An herbal compiled from an undiscovered garden. A prayer book from someplace sideways to ours. Open it to the middle and you feel a presence. Not a ghost, but an intention. Someone, somewhere, knew what all of this meant. The ink dried. The universe that could read it thinned out and blew away. And yet the thing is still beautiful, still deliberate, like a melody played on an instrument we can no longer build. We'll end this block of the journey on a ship at sea, because water has a way of holding mysteries lightly. Picture the Atlantic in late 1872. A stout brigantine called the Mary Celeste pushing along with a steady wind, canvas breathing in and out, hull whispering to itself. Another ship, the Dei Gratia, sights her moving oddly. Sails trimmed but no one answering signals. A boarding party climbs the rail and finds a good vessel in decent order. Food in the lockers, water in the casks, the crew's oilskins hanging, a sewing machine mid-project. The lifeboat is gone. The people are gone. The log is ordinary right up until it stops. No storm had torn her. No fire had blackened her timbers. There were no signs of struggle. Cargo intact, hatches secure. Explanations arrive like a flock of gulls. Foul play. Let's step indoors, into a library with high windows and the smell of old bindings, and I'll set a book down between us. It is called a manuscript because that is the proper word for something handmade, and it is called voynich because a collector once bought it. But those names are a costume. Beneath them is a forest. The pages bloom with plants no botanist can confidently name. Baths hold women like tiny pools of green water. Constellations spin into unfamiliar wheels. The script itself moves in neat, looping lines, elegant, consistent, as if the hand knew exactly what it was doing, and the language behind it refuses to resolve into anything we recognize. Code breakers have tried. Linguists have tried. Theories sprout like ivy. Cipher, hoax, lost language, constructed language. an herbal compiled from an undiscovered garden, a prayer book from someplace sideways to ours. Open it to the middle and you feel a presence. Not a ghost, but an intention. Someone, somewhere, knew what all of this meant. The ink dried. The universe that could read it thinned out and blew away. And yet the thing is still beautiful, still deliberate, like a melody played on an instrument we can no longer build. We'll end this block of the journey on a ship at sea, because water has a way of holding mysteries lightly. Picture the Atlantic in late 1872. A stout brigantine called the Mary Celeste pushing along with a steady wind, canvas breathing in and out, hull whispering to itself. Another ship, the Dei Gratia, sights her moving oddly. Sails trimmed but no one answering signals. A boarding party climbs the rail and finds a good vessel in decent order. Food in the lockers, water in the casks, the crew's oilskins hanging, a sewing machine mid-project. The lifeboat is gone. The people are gone. The log is ordinary right up until it stops. No storm had torn her. No fire had blackened her timbers. There were no signs of struggle. Cargo intact, hatches secure. Explanations arrive like a flock of gulls. Foul play. Some people think mysteries are loud things, dramatic, violent, impossible to ignore. But the truth is, the quiet ones last longer. They linger. They wait. They sit just beyond the reach of explanation, patient as stone. Let me take you now to a German village in the 18th century, a place called Tauplitz. One day, a simple shoemaker named Caspar Hauser appeared in the town square of Nuremberg carrying nothing but a letter. He couldn't speak properly, could barely walk straight, and seemed confused by the world around him, as if he had never seen it before. The letter claimed he had been raised in total isolation, and now wished to become a cavalryman like his unknown father. No one knew where he came from, he couldn't say. Over time he learned to speak, and told a strange story, that he was kept alone in a dark cell through childhood, visited only by a mysterious man who never showed his face. People wondered, was he a lost prince? A feral child? A fraud? He became a sensation, evidence to some that nature could survive without nurture. But then, as quietly as he arrived, he was attacked by a stranger, who disappeared. Caspar died, leaving behind a life that still doesn't make sense. Too real to be fiction. Too strange to feel true. History sometimes gives us people who feel misplaced, souls out of orbit. Some people think mysteries are loud things, dramatic, violent, impossible to ignore. But the truth is, the quiet ones last longer. They linger. They wait. They sit just beyond the reach of explanation, patient as stone. Let me take you now to a German village in the 18th century, a place called Tauplitz. One day, a simple shoemaker named Caspar Hauser appeared in the town square of Nuremberg carrying nothing but a letter. He couldn't speak properly, could barely walk straight, and seemed confused by the world around him, as if he had never seen it before. The letter claimed he had been raised in total isolation, and now wished to become a cavalryman like his unknown father. No one knew where he came from, he couldn't say. Over time he learned to speak, and told a strange story, that he was kept alone in a dark cell through childhood, visited only by a mysterious man who never showed his face. People wondered, was he a lost prince? A feral child? A fraud? He became a sensation, evidence to some that nature could survive without nurture. But then, as quietly as he arrived, he was attacked by a stranger, who disappeared. Casper died, leaving behind a life that still doesn't make sense. Too real to be fiction. Too strange to feel true. History sometimes gives us people who feel misplaced, souls out of orbit. But not all mysteries are tragic. Some are simply impossible. Consider the Antikythera mechanism. Discovered in 1901 in a shipwreck off a Greek island, it looked like nothing more than a lump of corroded bronze. Only when scientists carefully examined it did they realize it contained complex gears, over 30 of them, designed with precision equal to clockwork. Except, it came from around 150 to 100 BC. This machine, now believed to be an analog computer, predicted eclipses and tracked planets and constellations with mathematical sophistication centuries ahead of its time. The Greeks did not mass-produce devices like this. No one mentioned them. No workshop for them has ever been found. So who built it? Why did only one exist? Was it the last surviving piece of a forgotten science, or the first fragile step toward one that never continued? Sometimes history moves forward. Sometimes it flickers, breaks, and tries again. And what are we to make of the dancing forest of Kaliningrad? A quiet pine forest, except the trees do not grow straight. They twist in spirals and loops, bending into shapes like rings and coils. Scientists have examined wind patterns, soil conditions, magnetic fields. No full explanation exists. The trees bend and no one knows why. Something in the ground, perhaps. A natural phenomenon. That is the safe answer. But stand among them long enough, and it feels like stepping inside a whisper. That nature itself holds languages we haven't learned yet. Let's go closer to the present. 1980. A stone farmhouse in Germany known as Hinterkaifeck. The Gruber family lived there, quiet farmers. But neighbors noticed strange things. Footprints in fresh snow leading to the house, but none leading away. Unfamiliar noises in the attic, tools missing. Then came silence. When someone finally checked the home, everyone inside had been murdered, methodically, one by one. Animals were fed in the days after the deaths, fires lit. Someone stayed there afterward, calmly living among the dead. And then they vanished. The case has never been solved. Sometimes the mystery is not how people die, but how someone can be so patient with darkness. Do you hear that? It's the snow. It's always snowing in these unsolved places. Soft, quiet, covering tracks. But mystery is not always a crime. Sometimes it's a sound. There is a place in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where microphones have heard a noise so deep that it shakes water across thousands of miles. Scientists call it the bloop. Recorded in 1997, it was so powerful it seemed to come from something larger than a blue whale. The ocean held its breath for a moment that year, a low, rising groan from nowhere. Explanations? Icequakes, shifting continental shelves, naval interference. But none of those feel like answers. The sea has been loud for a long time. Maybe we just weren't listening before. Tonight, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm only here to walk with you through the places where knowledge thins out. Mystery is not the enemy of understanding. It's proof that we still have more to explore. And that is comforting. If your eyes are heavy, let them be. The world is still turning, the past is still there, and there are more stories waiting behind the door. Just say the word, and we'll keep going. Do you hear that? It's the snow. It's always snowing in these unsolved places. Soft, quiet, covering tracks. But mystery is not always a crime. Sometimes it's a sound. There is a place in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where microphones have heard a noise so deep that it shakes water across thousands of miles. Scientists call it the bloop. Recorded in 1997, it was so powerful it seemed to come from something larger than a blue whale. The ocean held its breath for a moment that year, a low, rising groan from nowhere. Explanations? Icequakes, shifting continental shelves, naval interference. But none of those feel like answers. The sea has been loud for a long time. Maybe we just weren't listening before. Tonight, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm only here to walk with you through the places where knowledge thins out. Mystery is not the enemy of understanding. It's proof that we still have more to explore. And that is comforting. If your eyes are heavy, let them be. The world is still turning. The past is still there. And there are more stories waiting behind the door. Just say the word, and we'll keep going. There's a place I want to take you next, high in the mountains of Peru, where the air is thin and the wind travels like an old messenger between peaks. Here, vast lines are carved into the desert floor, perfectly straight for miles. Geometric shapes, animals drawn so large they can only be seen from the sky. The Nazca lines, hundreds of them. Spiders, hummingbirds, monkeys, spirals, arrows. But here's the question. Why carve art that no one on the ground could see? Some say the lines were part of astronomical calendars, messages to the stars. Others believe they were pathways walked during rituals, maybe prayers carved into the earth itself. A few, those who would prefer wilder stories, call them landing markers for ancient visitors. But I think sometimes humans create without expecting an audience. Sometimes we make beauty simply because we can. It may not be a mystery of technology. Maybe it's a mystery of devotion. Silent, sweeping, patient. Not far from there, across the ocean on Easter Island, stand the Moai statues. Massive stone figures with long faces and solemn eyes. They face inland, not out to sea, as if still watching over a people who once carved them. Each one weighs as much as a small building. And yet, they were transported miles from the quarry where they were carved. How? No one agrees. The island has no trees now, stripped bare over centuries. But once it did. So maybe they rolled the statues on logs. Or maybe, as one experiment showed, they walked them upright, rocked forward by careful ropes from each side. But the real question is not how they moved, but why they stopped. Why were some statues left half-finished, lying abandoned? Why did a culture so dedicated to honoring its ancestors suddenly go quiet? Some histories do not end. They simply stop speaking. Let's move to something quieter. An object that doesn't belong anywhere. In 1885, a strange metal cube was reportedly found inside a block of coal in Austria. Perfectly shaped, with machined edges. Coal takes millions of years to form. How could a metal object be trapped inside it? Some dismissed it as a tool fragment that accidentally fell near coal and became part of a story that grew too wild. Others claim it was a hoax. But it's worth noting, sometimes an object doesn't need to be ancient to be mysterious. Sometimes, mystery feeds on the simple fact that the origins of things get lost. It reminds us that history is mostly fragments and guesses wearing confidence like a costume. Let's go to the sea again. Not for a ghost ship this time, but for a ghost message. In 1913, ship radios across the Atlantic picked up a faint Morse code distress signal, CQD, an early version of SOS. The message came from a ship identifying itself as the Titanic. Problem is, the Titanic had sunk a year earlier. The message repeated, then stopped. Operators wrote it off as interference or a prank, but no one ever claimed responsibility. Some called it lingering radio propagation, signals trapped in atmospheric layers, bouncing years later across the world. Others blamed grief, superstition. But ships are like people, they leave traces. Maybe some echoes of that terrible night just took longer to fade. Now, I want you to picture a quiet church in France, a forgotten place called Rennes-le-Château. In the late 1800s, a poor village priest named Bérenger Saunière suddenly became incredibly wealthy. He renovated his church, built towers, purchased land, yet his salary barely covered bread. Where did the money come from? He claimed donations. Investigators suspected blackmail. Conspiracy lovers said he found a treasure or secret, something hidden beneath the church tied to the Knights Templar, or even the bloodline of kings. When he died, he whispered to his housekeeper, "I know something that will make the world tremble." Then he said nothing more. What did he know? Maybe nothing. Deep in the frozen mountains of Siberia, reindeer herders sometimes speak of an ancient valley the locals call the Valley of Death. Scattered across the tundra are strange metal domes, half buried, grown over, silent. They look like giant bowls forged from copper, too smooth to be natural. Some hunters claimed they slept inside them during storms. Others swore those who stayed too long became sick, as if the metal itself carried a quiet poison. No one knows who built them, or why, or how long they've been there. Travelers go looking for them, but they move. Some say they sink deeper into the earth. Others say the tundra swallows them like secrets. Maybe they were shelters. Maybe weapons. Maybe nothing at all. Just tricks of memory told on snow. But the stories persist. And in the far north, stories are maps that never fade. Now let me take you somewhere warmer. To a calm English village called Oakington, where archaeologists once dug up something unexpected. Not gold. Not jewels. A skeleton of a woman buried alone. Burials are rarely mysterious, but this one was strange. Her bones appeared, stretched, not by disease, by force, as if someone had intentionally pulled and reshaped her body. No tools matched the marks. No known ritual explained it. Most unsettling of all, there were teeth marks on the bones. Human ones. Some suggested ritual cannibalism, others a violent attack. But there were no other wounds, no signs of struggle. Just careful, methodical. Something. A team of researchers examined it and gave no confident explanation. They don't like to admit that, but it happens. The body is real, the marks are real, the why is lost. Across the world in Australia lies Lake George, a quiet lake that behaves like a magician. One day it is full, stretching across miles. The next it vanishes, completely dry. No river feeds it. No river drains it. Scientists study shifting groundwater, wind patterns, pressure systems. Logical attempts. But even today, Lake George refuses to behave like a normal body of water. The indigenous people of the region have a simpler explanation. The lake is alive. It comes and goes when it wants. Sometimes, science and story don't argue. They simply talk past each other. Back in Europe, in the orchards of rural Poland, Farmers sometimes stumble on delicate iron tools buried beneath the roots of ancient trees. Tools that don't match any known farming era. They are finely made but not recorded in any craft guild or trade list. They seem purposeful, built for a reason, but no one knows what that reason was. They appear all across Eastern Europe, these mysterious tools. Too small to be weapons, too intricate to be casual. They look like they belong to a craft we no longer remember. History sometimes loses not just buildings, but entire professions. Now step into the sky with me. The year is 1803, and a merchant ship sailing off the coast of Japan spots something floating in the water. A small craft, round like a pot, made of metal and glass. Fishermen bring it ashore. Inside is a young woman, foreign, pale, clutching a mysterious box she won't let anyone touch. She speaks no known language. The villagers are fascinated, but suspicious. Stories spread. Was she a princess exiled for a forbidden love? A messenger from another land? A ghost? Fearing trouble, the villagers push the round boat back into the sea. And she drifts away forever. The legend of the Utsuro Bune, the hollow ship, became part of Japanese lore. Every version ends the same way. She carried a secret. No one ever found out what it was. Time for a quieter one. There is an island in the Mediterranean called Gavdos. Very small, windswept, peaceful. Locals there believe there are certain stones that return. If you take them from the island, no matter where you go, the stones somehow find their way back. Travelers swear they've shipped them across oceans, locked them in trunks, sold them, thrown them into lakes. Months later, they're back in pockets, bags, doorsteps. Logic shrugs. The islanders say, some things belong to where they grew. Not everything mysterious is dangerous. Some things are simply stubborn. And that brings us to the humming. It happens in different cities: Taos, Windsor, Auckland, Bristol. A low, untraceable hum heard by thousands, but not by all. It never stops, day and night. No source detectable. Engineers hunt for vibrating pipes, distant factories, electrical interference. Nothing holds up. Those who hear it struggle to sleep, slipping slowly toward madness, while those who don't hear it roll their eyes. But once someone hears the hum, they never unhear it. Mystery, like sound, doesn't need proof to exist. It just needs persistence. If you're still with me, good. If you're drifting, that's fine too. Tonight isn't about answers. It's about walking together across the borderlands of history. Those quiet places where explanation grows thin. There's a story from the 12th century China that speaks of a rain that wasn't rain at all. In a village recorded in the Song Dynasty chronicles, people looked to the sky during what they thought was a passing storm, only to see paper falling instead of water. Fine paper sheets, covered in writing from a language no one could read. Not Chinese, not Sanskrit, not Persian. Scholars traveled to examine it. Some said it was a prank, but thousands witnessed it over hours. The pages dissolved when touched by water and couldn't be preserved. No specimen survives, only written testimony in imperial records. That is the terrible beauty of old mysteries. Sometimes there's no relic, no artifact, just memory. You either believe it or you don't. The same was true for what happened in Mohenjo-Daro, an ancient city from the Indus Valley civilization. When it was discovered in the 1920s, archaeologists expected to find kings' tombs, palaces, war monuments. Instead, they found a perfect city. Streets laid out in straight lines, complex plumbing, Homes with private baths, public granaries, craft workshops, schools. A peaceful civilization, 5,000 years ago. And then, one day, it died. No signs of war, no mass graves, no evidence of famine. The people didn't burn or fall. They simply left. The city remained, frozen in silence. Some believe the river changed course, some say drought. But deep down, nobody truly knows where an entire people went, or why they never returned. There are things even time hesitates to explain. There was a medieval manuscript called the Rohank Codex, discovered in Hungary. It contains 448 pages of symbols and illustrations, battles, crosses, suns, constellations, and a script written right to left. Linguists tried to decode it. Computer analysis failed. Historians fought over whether it was Christian, pagan, or something else entirely. Some say it's a hoax. But to forge a hoax that complex would take years of disciplined work. If it is meaningless, then there were the airships. Yes, airships, seen across the United States in the late 1890s, before airplanes existed. Hundreds of newspaper reports describe large, silent vessels with bright searchlights drifting overhead. Some sightings included crews, described as strange, polite engineers who spoke perfect English, said they were traveling against the wind, and then vanished. Others crashed only to disappear before anyone returned with help. Hoaxes? Mass hysteria? Maybe. But something is odd. People saw them before flight was invented, and yet described real aeronautic principles, propellers, steering rudders, things the general public didn't yet understand. If these were hoaxes, they were strangely ahead of their time. And then there is the story of the Pollock twins, one of the most unsettling cases of reincarnation ever recorded. In 1957, 2 young sisters in England died in a car accident. A year later, their mother gave birth to twin girls. As they grew older, the twins began to ask for toys that had belonged to their dead sisters, without ever being told about them. They knew family secrets they were never taught, recognized places they had never been, and even had the same birthmarks as the sisters who died. A psychologist documented their case in detail, baffled by the accuracy of their memories. Were they proof of reincarnation? Genetic memory? Family grief woven into childhood? No one knows. But mystery doesn't always come from old stone ruins. Sometimes it lives inside a heartbeat. Not all mysteries feel supernatural. Some feel like math problems we still haven't solved. In 1908, something exploded over Siberia with more power than 1,000 atomic bombs. Trees were flattened for miles. Shockwaves circled the Earth. But there was no crater, no meteor fragments, no impact site. This is called the Tunguska event, the largest explosion in recorded history, and it happened in the middle of nowhere. It left behind no answers, only bent trees, scorched earth, and silence. I have more of these, dozens more. Things that don't fit into neat categories. Stories historians try to explain, but can't. And that's good, because mystery is not chaos. Mystery is space, and space is where imagination grows. In a tiny Italian village called Taggia, there is a church with paintings, frescoes, so old and faded that most people walk by without noticing them. But look closely. One of these frescoes, painted in the 1400s, shows something that does not belong. A man holding what looks unmistakably like a modern telescope. But telescopes weren't invented until 1608, over 150 years later. Historians call it a coincidence, a trick of interpretation. But if that's true, why are there dozens of other artworks across Europe showing strange objects that shouldn't exist yet? In a monastery in Romania, there's a fresco with a clearly painted satellite-like object floating behind Mary and Jesus. In a 15th century Austrian manuscript, there's a drawing of what looks like a flying machine. In a French castle, knights are seen fighting while disc-shaped craft float in the sky. Are these mistakes? Or has history been edited, with only fragments of truth slipping through, disguised as art? Not all strange visitors come from the sky. Some come from the mountains. In 1902, a prospector in Idaho claimed he found something buried in a canyon wall. A perfectly preserved little mummy. Human in shape, but only 14 inches tall. It became known as the Pedro Mountain Mummy. Scientists examined it. They confirmed it was real, once alive. Its skull was strangely formed, its teeth sharp, its bones dense, its age unknown. Stories spread that native tribes in the region had long spoken of tiny mountain people, the Namerigar, who shot poisoned arrows and lived hidden from humans. Museums got involved. Then collectors. Then, like many inconvenient artifacts, it vanished. Only a handful of photographs survive. Official records say it disappeared in the 1950s. Maybe someone hid it in a vault. Maybe someone destroyed it. Why is it that the best evidence always goes missing? Now I want to bring you to the lonely graves of Eileen Moore. 3 lighthouse keepers once tended the light there, on a remote rock off the coast of Scotland. In December 1900, a supply ship arrived after a violent storm and found the lighthouse empty. Tables were set for meals. Coats still hung on pegs. The clock had stopped. 2 oilskin coats were missing, but the third was still there, suggesting one of the men walked outside without protection into a storm. A log entry described a storm so violent it terrified them, yet no such storm was recorded by any nearby ship or island. Another entry: one of us is crying. A final note: God is over all. The men were never found. The lighthouse still stands. People say the wind there carries voices. But history doesn't always lose only people. It loses entire languages. Deep in the mountains of India, there is a language called Kusunda. Only one native speaker remains, an elderly woman. When she dies, a language will die too. A way of seeing the world that has existed for thousands of years. There are dozens of languages like hers, now ghosts in waiting. These are not just words, they are worlds. Each language has thoughts that can't be translated. When a language vanishes, humanity shrinks a little. Not everything mysterious is ancient. Some mysteries are dying right now while the world scrolls past. Across the sea in Nevada's Great Basin, there are strange stone walls in the mountains. Walls no one claims to have built. They run in long, broken lines along remote slopes where no ancient towns existed. They serve no defensive purpose. They attach to nothing. They end abruptly. Native tribes say they were built by the ones who came before, but archaeologists disagree. They date them as recent, yet no settlers ever reported building them. Tools are never found nearby. No quarries, no camps, no records. Just walls, waiting for a purpose. In a dusty French cellar in the village of Belmez, something impossible happened. One day in 1971, a woman noticed a face appearing in the concrete floor of her kitchen. Not a stain, not a burn. Something else. A human face forming in the stone itself. Then another appeared. Then another. Men, women, some with expressions of pain, some peaceful, some staring. Workers tried destroying the floor and pouring new cement, but the faces came back, reforming slowly, day by day. Scientists examined samples. No paint, no chemicals. The pattern was inside the stone, not on it. Some believed it was a haunting. Others called it a hoax too sophisticated to explain. But here's the most unsettling part. Photographs exist. Hundreds. These faces were real. The floor is now sealed in a museum, where even today, new faces still appear. There is a quiet road in Kentucky known as Pilot's Knob, and a grave there that has no business being as strange as it is. Beneath the iron cage of a rusted fence lies a small gravestone from 1916, the grave of a little girl. But why a cage around it? Locals say it wasn't built to keep people out. It was built to keep something in. The story says the girl was accused of witchcraft, or cursed by someone who was, and strange things began to happen around her grave, so they sealed it in iron chains. Over a century later, visitors swear the ground around it feels wrong, as if the air thickens, as if someone watches. Maybe it's just a story, or maybe some graves are not places of rest. Let's leave that behind and travel to something quieter, a mathematical miracle carved in stone. In India's Ellora caves there stands the Kailasa temple, a shrine cut from a single piece of rock. Not built, excavated from above, carved downward into the earth with hammers and chisels. Millions of tons of stone removed, precision that would be difficult even today, and it was done over 1,200 years ago. No records explain how they did it. No plans survive. If machines weren't used, and there's no evidence they were, then a workforce of thousands had to carve day and night for years, following a design only someone with an impossible mind could conceive. There is no other structure like it on Earth. There is a village in the Netherlands called Giethoorn, where something unsettling once happened. Not violent, but deeply strange. For reasons never fully recorded, the people there stopped using last names for over a century. Generations passed and graves were marked only with first names, or nothing. When census officials came, they found hundreds of people who could not identify their ancestors. Entire family lines vanished in paperwork, but the people were still there, living, farming, growing old. History didn't lose them. They simply stepped out of it. Then there is the mystery of Oak Island, a quiet patch of land off the coast of Nova Scotia. It began in 1795, when a teenager found a strange circular depression in the ground beneath an old oak tree. He began digging, and every 10 feet he found wooden platforms buried beneath the earth, as if someone had built a shaft, and then tried to hide it. Deeper still, he found booby traps, flood tunnels that filled the pit with seawater. Someone had gone to incredible lengths to bury something and ensure it stayed buried. Treasure hunters have dug there for over 200 years. They found coconut fibers from the Caribbean buried underground, stone tablets with strange markings, and links to the Knights Templar, pirates, and even early Freemasons. But the real treasure has never been found. Maybe it's gold. Maybe documents history doesn't want uncovered. Or maybe the real prize is the design itself. A message that says, some secrets are meant to stay secret. Another story comes from Japan, the village of Nagoro. The population is officially listed at around 30 people, but more than 400 people can be seen around the town. Sitting at bus stops, fishing by the river, working in fields, watching from windows. But none of them are alive. They are life-size dolls, handmade by a single woman who once lived among a full village, until everyone either died or moved away. So she replaced them, one by one, so the village would never feel empty. Every doll represents a real person who once lived there. Nagoro is quiet now. Wind moving through fields, dolls staring silently. A ghost town populated by memory. Then there is The Green Children of Banjos, another story of mysterious children, this time from Spain. In 1887, 2 children with green skin appeared near a mine. They spoke an unknown language, feared sunlight, and would only eat raw beans. Sound familiar? It mirrors the Woolpit children of England centuries earlier. Both stories, separated by miles and years, describe children from a twilight world, lost between realities. Coincidence, or something older than storytelling, wearing a new name each time it crosses into our world. In Bolivia, engineers once discovered a massive ancient stone platform buried near Lake Titicaca. So perfectly carved, its angles were accurate to fractions of a millimeter. This is Pumapunku, part of the ancient city of Tiwanaku. The stones weigh 80 tons each, yet were cut with machine-like precision centuries before the invention of machines. No inscriptions, no records, no tools recovered. Archaeologists argue over how it was done. Some say copper chisels, though copper cannot cut andesite. Others say long-lost techniques. Some whisper other things. But stone doesn't care what humans argue. It simply waits. There are songs that have no origin, melodies that drift across cultures and time. But none are stranger than Gloomy Sunday, a song written in 1933 in Hungary. After its release, rumors spread that people who heard it fell into despair. Some took their own lives. It became known as the Hungarian suicide song. Radio stations banned it. Some nations outlawed it. Scientists dismissed the phenomenon as superstition. But the song still carries something heavy. Even now, musicians who perform it say they feel something watching them while they play, as if a melody can inherit a soul. And then, there are roads that disappear. In India, on the banks of the Kottayam River, lies a road that vanishes underwater every year. Not because of rain or floods, but because the land itself breathes. The locals say the river is alive. It takes what it wants and returns what it chooses. Scientists study shifting riverbeds. Engineers shrug. Villagers just watch, calmly, and rebuild it every year. They've made peace with mystery. Maybe we are not meant to understand everything. Maybe that's what keeps the world interesting.